Okay, so today we're building around Goro Goro and Satoru. I'll admit that when I first read this card, I didn't really understand what was going on, and I kind of disregarded it as not really worth it. But once I read it and took the time to really understand what the card wanted to do, it all made sense and became a much better card. The card wants to make dragons. So that's where the focus will be for this version of the deck. Goro Goro and Satoru is a 3/4 legendary goblin human for blue, black, red. It says, whenever one or more creatures you control that enter the battlefield this turn, deal combat damage to a player. Create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. Then it says pay 1 and a red to give your creatures haste until end of turn. So if you can hit all 3 of your opponents, each with a single creature that ETB'd this turn, you'll get 3 5/5 dragons on the field. However, if you're focusing on juking ninjas onto the field, you probably won't have enough mana early on to do this. So instead, I'm using a lot of low-cost evasive creatures that will make dragons very easily, and lots of them. First are the ninjas. Dokchi's Silencer, Moon Circuit Hacker, Nezumi Prowler, Silver Fur Master, Skull Snatcher, Mistblade Shinobi, Prosperous Thief, Azra Smoke Shaper, Ingenious Infiltrator, Moonblade Shinobi, Moon Snare Specialist, and Ninja of the Deep Hours are all creatures with ninjutsu that we can just throw onto the field to trigger Gotoru. Now, each of those ninjas have a unique ability that will trigger when they enter or deal combat damage to a player, but the primary reason these things are in there is to make dragons. If their side effect does something special, well, good for you. It doesn't matter, we want to make dragons. My main plan with these ninjas is to return a creature that won't trigger Gotoru back to my hand. Then the ninja enters the field, deals damage, and triggers Gotoru. Next is the original plan for the deck, which was just flying, hasty creatures. Gurmag Swiftwing, Impetuous Sunchaser, Lightning Stormkin, Sprite Dragon, and Storm Chaser Mage should be able to get through the turn after Gotoru hits the field and will get us a dragon right away. My favorite ones though, Phoenix Chick, Flamewake Phoenix, and Skyfire Phoenix. They're low cost and have the possibility to trigger Gotoru to make dragons, but if they're destroyed, we can bring them back if we meet the requirements and they'll be able to swing in that turn to trigger Gotoru again. Skyfire Phoenix is a special case though. It says when you cast your commander, return Skyfire Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. When your board is inevitably destroyed, on the same turn you cast your commander, you get this Phoenix on the field that will also create a dragon for you when it deals damage to the opponent that deserves it the most. I would add more Phoenix creatures to this deck if they didn't have such weird requirements to bring them back and there's no real synergy to them. To help swarm our opponents with creatures, we have some token makers that will fill that role nicely. Loyal Apprentice will make a 1/1 Thopter with haste at the beginning of combat if you control your commander. Felden of the Third Path will create a token copy of a creature in your graveyard for 2 and a red if you tap it. Copying a ninja will get you any effect they might give you as if their ninjutsu ability was activated. Urabrask's Forge is an artifact that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put an oil counter on it. Then create an X1 Phyrexian Horror with Trample and Haste, where X is the number of oil counters on it, and then you sack the token at the beginning of the next end step. Ortheon, Hero of Lavabring, will create a token copy of a creature you control for 1 and a red if you tap it. You can also pay 6 and 3 red and tap it to make 5 copies of a creature you control, all but guaranteeing that you'll get a few dragons as a result. Mimic Vat will let you exile a non-token creature when it dies. Then you can pay 3 and tap it to make a token copy of the exiled creature. If a really good creature your opponents control dies, then you get to make copies of it, and if those copies deal damage to an opponent, you get dragons too, which, as we can tell, is a pretty good deal. And speaking of good deals, if you like what you've seen so far, why don't you hit that like button and sub to the channel? It'll get these videos out to more people who will enjoy them and help the channel grow at the same time. Thanks. Blade of Selves will give a creature Myriad, which will create a copy of it tapped and attacking when it attacks. Now, I'm not a fan of this card because of its high equip cost, but on the right creature, or if you have enough spare mana, it might be worth it. Broodbirth Viper is a 3/3 with Myriad that says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. It's an expensive creature at 5 mana and can probably be easily replaced with something more effective. It's just in here because it has Myriad. Eltural Survivors are a different story though. It's a 0/4 for 3 and a red with Trample in Myriad. It says as long as it's attacking, it gets +X/+0, where X is the number of lands defending player controls. Depending on the stage of the game, these creatures might be very big and will absolutely make it through to deal combat damage and create a dragon. To help our creatures get through more easily, we have some unblockable effects. Tetsuko Umezawa Fugitive says creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. This covers our Thopter tokens, 5 of our ninjas, 5 of our phoenixes, and the horrors that Urabrask's Forge will create, along with 2 creatures we haven't covered yet. Alora Merry Thief says whenever you attack, up to 1 target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Targeting a token, ninja, or one of our flying hasters will only give us the chance to make more dragons on the next step, or on our next turn. Then there's Whirler Rogue. When it ETBs, you create 2 1/1 Thopters, and you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to make a creature unblockable. Since we'll be throwing creatures out in swarms, we're going to need a way to pay for all of them. Gold Vein Pick is an equipment with an equip cost of 1 that will create a treasure when a creature deals combat damage to a player. Sticky Fingers is an aura that gives a creature menace and will create a treasure on combat damage, but when that creature dies, you draw a card. Horde Robber is a 1/3 that will create a treasure on combat damage. Zentarum Bandit will create a treasure when it attacks if you pay 1 life. Shiny Impetus will give an opponent's creature +2/+2 and goad it. When it attacks, you create a treasure. So just throw it on something massive, right? Rose Room Treasurer says whenever another creature ETBs under your control, create a treasure token. This will trigger twice, but every activation after the second one, you can pay X and it will deal X damage to any target. Grim Hireling will create 2 treasures when 1 or more creatures deals combat damage to a player, so you can possibly get 6 treasures from this card. Then you can pay a black and sack X treasures to give a creature -X/-X until end of turn as a sorcery. Next, we'll need to draw cards since we'll be dumping our hands relatively quickly. Seize the Spoils will have you discard a card and draw 2 cards and create a treasure. Bident of Thassa and Reconnaissance Mission will have you draw a card when a creature you control deals combat damage to a player. And Open into Wonder costs X and 2 blue to make X creatures unblockable, and you'll draw a card when they deal combat damage to a player. Now, to capitalize on all of these creatures entering the battlefield during your turn, we've included Impact Tremors and Warstorm Surge to help throw some damage at our opponents or targets that might need removing. Then, if we want to save our creatures to use them again, we have Cunning Evasion and Grazilex Illithid Scholar. Both will let you return a blocked creature you control back to your hand, but Grazilex also says when 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. But unlike our other options, this only draws you 1 card no matter what. And after that, we have what's left. Aetherize and Blasphemous Act to clear the board of troublesome creatures that might threaten you. Counterspell, Defabricate, and Negate to counter some spells that could disrupt your game plan. Kaya's Ghost Form, Nizium Skin, Keep Safe, and Lazotep Plating to protect our creatures from targeted removal. Feed the Swarm and Bedevil for a splash of removal, and then of course Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Demir's Signet, Izzet Signet, and Rakdos Signet as a bit more ramp. Then 37 lands. Now, this is the initial version of this deck, just a prototype, and I think as playtesting goes on, we will absolutely swap some of the less effective cards for more removal and board wipes, since I don't often play many of those types of cards and prefer to focus my decks on my primary game plan, which sometimes doesn't end up being a good thing. But it's a good starting point for any of you who might be interested in this particular tactic. But that's about it. If everything works out the way I think it will, you'll constantly have a swarm of attacking creatures and an army of dragons to wreak havoc on your opponents. But if I'm being honest with you, I would really like to add more phoenixes to the deck. Anyway, let me know what you think of this Goro Goro and Satoru deck in the comments below and what direction you decided to take it. As always, I'm sure I missed some cool ideas, so I look forward to seeing those too. I'm working on a Glissa Herald of Predation deck, and I might have stumbled upon what might be the best version of an Infect deck I've ever played, so I'll put that up when it's ready. So definitely look forward to that. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and until next time, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.